Hey there, welcome back. Today we're going to look at sine and cosine and how we use them in many ways, especially in trig units. So before we do that, if you're good with sine and cosine and how they're defined and where they are around the unit circle, you can skip to the questions. But just in case you need, you're curious a little more about them or you want a refresher, let's take a look before we start our questions. If we want to define sine here, let's write sine, and let's give it an angle, right? If we just write sin, it doesn't mean anything, right? Sine of theta, and let's draw or fill in, let's label our picture here. So say we have some angle theta in here. Well, what could I call this side of my triangle? I can call this x. And what can I call this side of my triangle? Well, we can call that y, my vertical distance. And then if it's a circle, my hypotenuse here, I'm not going to call h, I'm going to call r because we're inside our unit circle. And maybe I've been saying unit circle, but just to make sure you remember where it comes from, here's the equation of our unit circle, x squared plus y squared equals 1. And it's called the unit circle because our radius, right, our radius is always 1 in the unit circle, 1 unit. So if we're looking at our sine ratio, right, opposite over hypotenuse, all right, from our angle here, right, our angle theta, my opposite side is y, and my hypotenuse is r. But what did we just say? If we're talking about our unit circle, right, our radius here is 1. Do I really need to divide by r? I am dividing by r, but it's really 1, right? And what's y over 1? Well, that's just going to be y. So my first takeaway is that I always need to remember that the sine of theta is y when we're doing all of these great trig unit circle questions. And then similarly, maybe I'll change the color for cosine. Let's take a look at cosine. What's cosine equal to? Well, if I label a little angle in here, call it theta, well, what's my ratio here? And maybe first let's fill in, this is my side x, this is my side y. And I'm going to call this my hypotenuse. I'm going to call it r. Well, cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse. So if I have my adjacent side is x and my hypotenuse is r, well, again, what happens when we're on our unit circle? I just have x over 1, which is just x. So I need to plaster into my brain for this unit and many others that the cosine of theta is x, right? Because we're on our unit circle. My radius is just 1. All right, so sine is my y value on my unit circle. Cosine is my x value. So in terms of coordinates, right, we used to write x comma y. Well, on my unit circle, I could write cosine of theta comma sine of theta. And we'll use that in some future lessons too. But anyways, sine is y, cosine is x. Let's take a look to make sure we're really comfortable with our functions here. And maybe we'll change it. The first questions I want to do is let's look at when cosine and sine are positive, negative, or 0. So maybe we'll go back up to our drawing here. Well, if sine's my y value, where's the y values positive? Well, in my first and second quadrant, right? Our y values above my x-axis are always positive. And maybe we'll label, just in case, we'll label our quadrants, right? The first quadrant, the second quadrant, the third quadrant, and my fourth quadrant, right? So sine, maybe we'll use green. Sine is going to be positive, right, in my first quadrant. It's going to be positive in my second quadrant, right? Y values we're talking about. And then in my two bottom quadrants, the third and the fourth, well, sine's going to be negative in my third quadrant and negative in my fourth. Similarly, if we move on to cosine over there, well, I'm going to rewrite the quadrants really quick. My first, my second, my third, my fourth. Notice they go in the same direction counterclockwise like our angles that we measured. Well, cosine, my x value, right? Well, x is positive in the first quadrant and positive in the fourth quadrant, right? Where are my positive x values? To the right of my y-axis. And then it's going to be negative in my second quadrant and negative in my third. So that's how we're going to think about answering these questions. And now we're not going to use calculators. We're also not going to look at these diagrams. I would suggest as you work through these, try to visualize the unit circle yourself. And I'll draw sometimes in the beginning, especially for some later questions, it's helpful to draw a quick rough sketch of where you are. What quadrant are you? So let's see. let's find out if each expression is positive, negative, or zero. So if I have my little unit circle here, I want the cosine of 3 pi. I don't care what the value is, I just want to know is it positive, is it negative, or is it zero? Well, first of all, where am I? Let's go around. Well, and maybe I'll use a different color. I go around to pi. Here's 2 pi, right? All the way around. If I go one more pi, I'm over here, right? Right on my axis. Well, what's the x value, right? Cosine is the x value. What's the x value on my unit circle all the way to the left here? -1. Okay. And I just didn't read my directions. We're just asking, is it positive, negative, or zero? So the answer is negative. We'll worry about exact values later. Let's just get comfortable with the signs. All right, let's take a look at my next one. All right, 5 pi over 4. Well, here's pi over 4, right, pi over 2, 3 pi over 4, 4 pi over 4, 5 pi over 4. All right, I'm down here. Sine is the y value. What's the y value when I'm down here? Well, that's negative, right? The y value is negative in my third quadrant. How about cosine of 7 pi over 6? Again, quick rough sketch. 7 pi over 6, where's that? Right around somewhere over here. And our sketch doesn't have to be perfect because we just want to know, is it positive, negative, or zero, right? So a little past pi, so I know I've gone under my x-axis, but I'm looking at x values. So I don't really care if I'm down or above it. I'm to the left of 0, right? So I'm going to have a negative cosine value. How about the sine of negative pi? Well, where's negative pi? I go in this direction. I'm right over here. Well, the sine of negative pi, what's my y value, right? Sine is the y value on my unit circle. It's not positive or negative, right? It's 0. At negative pi or at pi, if we had gone the other way, it's going to be 0. Next one, cosine of 210. Well, if I draw approximately where 210 is, I get to 180. I go 30 past it, right? I'm somewhere over here. What is the x value over here in my third quadrant? Well, x, that's a negative. Right, I'm on the left of my y-axis. How about the sine of negative pi over 3? Again, draw a nice rough little sketch. I'm going to go about a third. Maybe it's over here. Okay, what is my y value down here? Well, my y value is negative in my fourth quadrant. Let's continue. Cosine of 3 pi over 2. All right, 3 pi over 2. I go 1 pi over 2, 2 pi's over 2, right? That's pi. 3 pi over 2. All right, what is my x value at 3 pi over 2? Well, left is negative, right is positive. I'm right on 0. 0. Sine, 135. And hopefully, as you do these, you do get faster. But at first, always take your time and work slowly. And eventually, practice makes perfect, and you'll get faster. All right, 135, about here. All right, I'm going, what's my y value? Well, I'm above the x-axis, so my y value is positive. All right, sine of 2 pi over 3. All right, maybe 2 pi over 3 is about here, right? All right, where am I? Sine is y, positive. Right, I'm above the x-axis. Cosine, my x value. Well, let's draw 11 pi over 6. That's about here, right? I went almost all the way around, and I'm over here. I want the x value under the x-axis. Well, that's going to be negative. How about the cosine of 91 degrees? That kind of sounds weird. Well, I know 90 is right up here. And what's the cosine of 90, maybe to kind of start? Well, that's right on x is 0, right? I'm looking at x values for cosine. So if I go a slight bit past it, I'm into the negative x territory. So I have a negative. How about the sine, and I'll scroll down a little. How about the sine of 181? Well, the sine of 181, let's draw, again, a little rough sketch. Well, 180 is right at that x-axis. If I go a little past it, I'm in negative y territory, right? So the sine value is going to be negative. And my last couple, cosine of 740. Oh, no, it's such a big number. I don't know what to do. Well, 360 and 360 is 720. So I went around once. I went around twice. I'm at 720. And if I go a little more, 20 degrees more, well, where am I? Well, it's cosine. It's an x value. It's positive, right? It's on the positive x-axis here. Or sorry, it's on the positive first quadrant. again, looking at x values in my next one. What is 99 pi over 100? I don't even know, but what I do know is it's really close to pi, right? 99 pi over 100. Well, I'm getting super close to getting exactly at pi, but I'm not there yet. I'm still up here. And so it doesn't really matter. I guess I should have made this sign to make it a little sneakier. I'm in negative x territory, right? Both my third and fourth quadrants are negative, so I have negative for my cosine value there. And what is the sine of negative 11 pi over 6? Let's draw that out. Well, now, if I'm going the opposite direction, I'm almost all the way back to the beginning, right? I'm almost at a full rotation of 2 pi, and it's the sine value, so I'm looking for what's y? Y is positive in my first quadrant. And last but not least, sine of 4 pi. Again, we're looking for our y value. If I go 1 pi, 2 pi, 3 pi, 4 pi, I'm back on my x-axis here. What is the y value on my x-axis? Well, it's 0. All right, hope those helped. Let's do a few last ones. Now we're actually concerned about what is the actual x or y value at some of these certain places on my unit circle. Before we just cared, is it positive, is it negative? Perhaps it was 0. Now I want to give the actual value. So again, I still do this to this day. I draw a quick sketch. That'll help you make less mistakes. So the cosine of 90, I want the x value when I'm at 90 degrees. Well, if I go up here at 90 degrees, what's my x value? My x value is 0. And how about the sine of 90? Well, I don't even have to draw the picture again. I'm right up here. But now, again, keep these things separate in your head. Cosine x, sine y. Now, my y value on my unit circle is 1, right? How far are you away from your axis? Well, that's that radius of 1 on my unit circle. All right, how about the cosine of negative pi? Again, let's draw a picture. I'm at negative pi over here. What is the x value at negative pi? Well, that's a distance of negative, well, the distance itself is 1, but you're at negative 1, right, on my coordinate plane. You're at negative 1. Right, because you're in this negative x territory, right, on the left of the y-axis. And if, I guess I didn't have to draw this again, whatever, we'll draw it one more time. And how about the y value? What's the y value when I get to negative y? Well, I'm at 0, right? I'm not any positive or negative. I'm right on the x-axis, so I'm at 0. Couple more. How about the sine of 270? Let's always draw a picture. Down here, whoops, right on that axis. Sorry, it's sloppy. What is my y value down here? Well, it's negative 1. Cosine of 3 pi over 2. This is a pseudo trick question. What's 3 pi over 2? Well, that was the same thing as 270. So now I'm looking for what's the x value down here? Well, what's the x value when you're on your y-axis? It's just 0. And if I'm looking again for an x value at negative pi, well, I'm over here again. Boy, that's an ugly curve there. But what's the x value out here on my coordinate plane of the unit circle? I'm just at negative 1. Did I do that one before? Oh, yeah. Sorry, I didn't change that. My bad. And then sine of 3 pi. Well, if I go 1 pi, 2 pi's, 3 pi's, what's the y value? And we've kind of had this question before, but what's the y value over here? It's just 0. Right? I'm not up or down in terms of any y distance from my axis. My last couple questions for today, cosine of negative pi over 2. And you'll notice they start to repeat, right? Now I'm down here. Well, we already know what this question is. We already know the answer. We know my x value is just going to be 0. And so until we get into some of the more fun questions, perhaps next time, where we get off my axes, these questions are going to repeat. Your answers, hopefully you've seen, take a look at all your answers. 0, 1, negative 1, 0, 1, negative 1, right? Because what are we doing this whole time? We're just traveling from axis to axis to axis to axis and finding out, well, am I at 1, negative 1, or 0, depending on if I'm x or y. So let's finish these up. Negative pi over 2. Negative 3 pi over 2. On my pi, I go 1 more. What's the x value? Well, 0. And how about sine of 0? Okay, I go 0, either radians or degrees, right? Doesn't matter. I'm right here? Well, the sine value at 0 is just 0, right? That's my y value, y. And how about my x value? Same picture. Well, now I'm at 1, right? Okay. Again, hope this helps. You don't have to do the questions at all as fast as I do, right? I've seen these quite a few times. But pause as you go along and try your best. And I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching, and please subscribe to After School Extra Help. Also, leave a comment if you'd like more examples, or if you want another topic to be covered.